The reason we need to use a tool like Fiddler is because we can legitimately do this. We can say that mapping in the etc hosts file and then pass the port, but we can't get rid of this port mapping in the etc hosts file. It would be ideal if we could do something like this and go into that directory, it would be ideal if we could edit this file and pass the port there. That would be ideal. But unfortunately we can't, because the Windows environment natively does not support port mapping in the hosts file. So we have to use an external tool or a third-party tool to get past that problem. So Fiddler's the answer. So let's go to install Fiddler. Okay, right. Let's grab it, drop it onto the desktop, and let's open this Fiddler. Because under Tools, Hosts, we can enable mapping, and we can import the hosts file, and we can go down here, and we can say, do that for us. And now, if we go back here, bingo, we get the expected result. So we've got past the port mapping issue by using the Fiddler tool, and we can now address our box in the normal fashion. Now I just need to point something out. Normally this wouldn't happen. Normally the Vagrant box would install correctly, but there's an issue. This is brand new. The Vagrant release is brand new. Windows 10 is brand new. And there's obviously some incompatibility, inconsistency somewhere between them. If you look at the GitHub issue tracking on both the Vagrant and the VirtualBox side, the guys are aware of it. And somewhere between those two entities, they'll find a solution. But that doesn't help us now. We want to get the environment working now. And the only way that we can do that is through a workaround by not getting Vagrant to issue that networking configuration command in the .rb file. So by hacking that out, we've managed to get it up and running, but that then created the IP address issue. We saw we can't run it directly out of VirtualBox because at this point we don't really need Vagrant anymore. We've used it for its provisioning. The box is provisioned, but that didn't work, so we had to go back to hacking out that line and running it the way that it's booted now, but that means the Ethernet address is on a 10 dot, which is unroutable. So we can still address the box via localhost, but it gave us the port problem, so we got around that. So effectively we've got the machine up and running the way that we would like it to have running, and this is the way that it would normally be running. Just the IP address would be different, and the host name would already be pre-configured. Okay, so we've worked around the issues. Now, before we go any further, I need to jump back and show you something here. Here's our code directory, and let's make a new directory called L510. Okay, and let's push that to the side there and go into it, and let's bring the machine up. Oh, no, that would be silly because it is running already. In actual fact, let me show you what it'll do. Let's go into the Homestead directory and we say Vagrant up. and you'll see what it will do if you try and do this with a running machine. VM is already running. Pretty obvious. Okay. Okay, so let's open Tunnelia now, and let's go onto the box. Let's type in the password here. Okay. Let's switch that down, bring this here. I want to show you something, and this will now illustrate that thing I was talking about earlier in terms of the mapping of the drives. So on this side, on the right hand side, we have our Ubuntu machine running as a VM, and there's our code directory. So if we cd into that directory and we do a listing there now, we see there is the L5 Win10 directory we just created. So let's go into that directory. Now, have a look at what happens on the left. If I make a directory on the virtual machine, let's call it temp, it appears on my Windows environment because I've mapped it. If I remove that directory, the change is reflected in my native Windows environment. And this is why we don't need to go and install Composer and PHP and all these other things within our local Windows environment. You'll find a number of tutorials on the web that will say you have to do it like that. In order to get Laravel running and to create a Laravel project, you must use Composer, clearly. Now, to use Composer, you need PHP. Ergo, you have to go and install PHP and Composer within your native Windows environment. Well, that's actually not true, because we have Composer running here. And any changes that I make with Composer here are automatically going to be reflected on my local native Windows environment. So if I install Laravel onto my VM, and it's in the mapped section of the VM, it's automatically going to reflect on my local drive. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so I wanted to show that. So let's take stock of where we are. We've got the VM up, we've got Vagrant running, we've got our full VirtualBox environment set up on Win10. We can access it correctly. We've got past the port issues, and everything's hunky-dory. So I can close this down now, and I can go back into my bash, and we can Vagrant halt the machine, and we can now start to look at the next thing, which is the installation of the actual Laravel framework itself via Composer. But just before we do that, I actually want to do something else, because this is the workflow that we have right now to get this environment up. We go git bash, we say run as administrator, we say yes, we say cd homestead, we then Vagrant up. It's going to get really, really annoying. If you're like me, you like to try and reduce things and get them to be as smooth as possible. So I actually want to show you a clever little trick of how we can work around that and just drop two icons on the screen that we can double click, which will automatically bring up our Vagrant environment or automatically halt our Vagrant environment. Okay, so what do we want to do? We want to create two icons here. So let's do this. Let's go and search for task scheduler. Let's go into the library. Let's create a task. Let's give it a name of Vagrant up. Let's run with highest privileges on Windows 10. Let's create a new action, and let's go find that file we want to run. Now we want to run bash, so let's go to git bin. Let's go find the sh. There it is there. Let's run some parameters. Minus login minus I, and let's pass it a command called vagrant up, and we want that to start in C:\users /username / homestead. Okay, so that's that. Just want to check anything else here. No, that's alright. Okay, so that looks good. So that's cool. Now, how do we fire this? We know we can fire it with a command line. So let's do this. Let's create a new icon, a new shortcut. Let's browse to local disk, Windows, System 32, and let's go all the way down and let's find task schedule, schedule task, task manager, task scheduler. Hang on. I'm going the wrong way. Hang on, let me find it. Oh, this is laborious. I will find it eventually. There, that one. Okay, schedule tasks ESE, and I know that we can say to it run, and we can give it a task name, and the task name which we created was vagrant up. Okay, so we can do that, and let's call this vagrant up. Okay, and just as a final bit of sugar, let's actually change its icon, and let's go and look in the downloads for the course, and let's give it the vagrant up icon. Okay, apply. Okay, now let's do exactly the same thing in reverse. Let's create a task. Let's call it vagrant halt. Run with highest privileges for 10. Action, new, browse. We want to go to that sh. Okay, minus login minus I, and a command of vagrant halt, and we want that to fire in C:\users /len /homestead. Okay, let's check everything else is fine. Yeah, okay. Let's do the icon, new shortcut. Let's browse to local disk, Windows, System 32, and find schedule tasks, schedule task. There we go, that one. And let's say we want to run a task name of vagrant halt. Next, Vagrant halt, finish, and let's change its icon to Vagrant halt. Okay, all things being equal, we should now have double click up and double click halt. Let's have a look. Okay, all good. If we tunnelier into it, let's actually do this as well. Let's give it a password there. Let's store it. Let's log in. So that hopefully reduces that workflow element. So we're in, no problem. Okay, let's Vagrant halt. Okay, groovy. So we've got the whole machine up, machine down process reduced to a double click. That's much better than having to open git bash as admin, accept the UAC, go into the home directory, change to Homestead, type in Vagrant up, and do the same thing in reverse every time. Okay, great. Now we can get on to the next thing, and that's actually installing the core Laravel application framework itself. So I'll see you in the next section and we'll tackle that.